You ever try to disappear without actually leavin'? That's exactly what I wanted when I moved back to my uncle's old place on Wicket Lake. After 27 years in the Navy and 3 more trying to fit into the corporate world, I was done. All I wanted was quiet water, good fish, and a place where nobody called meetings about things that didn't matter. My Uncle Joe, God rest him, left me the lake house when he passed. And I mean the lake house. He'd built the place himself in the early 80s, before the rest of Wicket Pines was even paved. It sat tucked into the tree line on the eastern bend of the lake. Little dock, rusty boathouse, piece. That first week back, I could feel my bones unknotting. Every morning, I'd sip black coffee on the deck, while fog curled up from the water like smoke from a sleeping dragon. Birds chirped. Turtles sunned. For the first time in years, I didn't need a calendar or a deadline. I'd brought down my old trawler. Nothing fancy, just a 15-foot flat-bottomed bay boat I'd rebuilt from scrap. Named her Miss Virginia after my mom. Hauled her into the boathouse and started restoring her slow and steady. The engine needed some love, the hull was chipped, but I wasn't in any rush. She wasn't for show, she was for me. Now here's where things started to sour. About 10 days in, I'm sanding the trim around the engine hatch when I hear heels clicking on gravel. Not boots. Heels. That's already suspicious in a lakeside neighborhood. I look up, and there she is, blonde bob, clipboard, sunglasses, and that stiff little smile people wear when they think they're better than you. "Good morning," she chirps, looking around like she's grading my house. "I'm Pamela Whitmore, president of the Wicket Pines Homeowners Association." I wiped my hands on a rag and nodded. "Mason Carter. I live here." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "Oh. I thought the place was unoccupied." "Not anymore." She forced another smile. "Lovely. Just wanted to stop by and welcome you. I hope you've had a chance to review the HOA covenants." I shrugged. "Been a little busy getting settled." "Well," she said, pulling out a folded packet like she carried it around just waiting to pounce, "we have certain aesthetic standards around the lake. Especially regarding watercraft and shoreline appearance." She gestured, toward Miss Virginia like she was pointing at a dead raccoon. I looked at her, deadpan. "That's my boat." "Oh, I figured. It's just that, well, some residents have expressed concerns. It's a bit, shall we say, unsightly. And technically, storing vessels in visible disrepair violates Article 3, Section D. I'll admit, the Navy taught me how to keep a straight face." I smiled. "She'll be seaworthy before you know it. Just talking my time." Pamela shifted, clearly not used to being deflected. "Yes, well, please do make sure she complies with our lake guidelines. Wicket Pines takes pride in its image." That's when she handed me the HOA contact sheet, the complaint form, and a magnet with the association's Lake Etiquette hotline. I kid you not, a hotline. After she left, I sat on my dock with a beer, just staring at the water. Something about her rubbed me raw. The way she talked to me, like I was some trailer park squatter who'd tracked mud into her marble foyer. What she didn't realize, what nobody around here realized, was that I wasn't just some guy with a fixer-upper. My uncle owned the lake. Not the house. Not a plot of land. The lake itself. Wicket Lake. Every acre of water, the full riparian rights, and the submerged land beneath it. I hadn't flaunted it because I didn't need to. But Pamela, she was about to test just how far I'd let her push. Over the next week, I kept working on Miss Virginia. Replaced the fuel lines, rewired the ignition, polished the console. She was starting to look like something again. And during all that time, I'd see Pamela making her rounds, popping into yards, snapping photos with her phone, pointing at people's fences like she was on patrol. One morning, I found a yellow slip stuck to my front door. A formal HOA notice. Violation of visual standards, boat in disrepair. A $75 fine. I chuckled. She really thought I'd just roll over. I took the notice inside and tacked it to the fridge like a trophy. The next day, 2 guys from the HOA's so-called beautification committee showed up in matching polos. One had a clipboard. The other held a measuring tape. I watched from the boathouse as they tiptoed around my dock, mumbling and taking note. I stepped out when the clipboard guy started leaning over Miss Virginia's hull. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked, startling him. Clipboard jumped. "We're just documenting for compliance. You can't store this kind of vessel on open display." "She's not an open display," I replied. "She's in my boathouse. She's visible from the common path," tape measure added. "That counts." I smirked. "You mean the little trail your president cut through the woods last summer? The one that goes across private land?" Clipboard shifted. "We were told this was common property." I leaned against the post, crossed my arms. "Well, you were told wrong. They left in a hurry, but I knew this wasn't the end." That night, I pulled out the old file my uncle kept in the upstairs closet. Title deed, maps, legal docs, even the original survey. The words, "full lake rights," were underlined in 3 places. Pamela thought she was dealing with just another cranky neighbor. What she didn't know was I was sitting on the one thing she couldn't control, and the second she tried to flex on me again, I'd remind her that this lake didn't belong to her little committee or her fancy clipboard crew. It belonged to me. And I was done playing nice. The first fine didn't bother me. Not really. I figured it was Pamela trying to puff her feathers and make me fall in line. But when the second one came, $125 for repeat noncompliance, I started to get the feeling this wasn't just about the boat. It was about control. You see, folks like Pamela can't stand it when someone ignores their imaginary authority. They need you to squirm, to write apology emails, to attend the meetings where they pretend to be mayors of neighborhoods with names like Pines or Creekside. And I was her worst nightmare. A man who didn't ask for permission, didn't care about committee titles, and definitely wasn't impressed by matching polos and pastel clipboards. That second notice came with a letter. It was printed on heavy cardstock like it was a wedding invitation, and it read like something out of a court summons. "Due to your ongoing disregard for Wicket Pines' HOA visual and environmental guidelines, further action may be taken, including forced removal of non-compliant property or legal escalation." That line there, forced removal, that one made me laugh out loud. Try towing a boat that's tied to land I own. Try it. But it wasn't funny for long. Couple days later, I caught some movement down by my dock around dusk. I crept out the side door, barefoot and quiet as a ghost. Sure enough, 2 teenagers in fishing club shirts were spray painting something on the back of Miss Virginia. I stepped out with a flashlight and hit M with the beam like a searchlight. Drop the can. They froze. One ran. The other tripped and fell flat on the dock. "Tell Pamela her little pond pirates just crossed the line," I said, helping him up by the back of his shirt collar. "And next time, I press charges." That's when I knew, this wasn't just Pamela. She'd sicked the whole HOA fishing club on me. Apparently, they saw my boat as pollution and a hazard to the sport. I guess if your idea of sport is tossing bait from a base boat in a lake you don't even own, then yeah, a real boat must feel like an insult. The very next morning, I found 3 more violations taped to my boathouse. 1 for inappropriate dock maintenance, 1 for non-approved shoreline trimming, and 1, get this, for hosting unauthorized gatherings. The only gatherings I'd hosted were mosquitoes and squirrels. I drove down to the HOA office, which sat in the front of the neighborhood like a dentist's office with too much granite. Inside was a single receptionist, a plastic fern, and a gold plaque that read, HOA President Pamela Whitmore. She was in the back conference room, which had all glass walls, so I could see her sitting with a few other board members. I knocked on the glass like I owned the place, and in a way I did. She looked up, her smile freezing in place. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said, rising and coming out like a school principal about to scold a parent. "Pamela," I said, keeping my tone level, "we need to talk about these fines." "There's standard protocol," she said, folding her arms. "The community has rules. If you're not interested in maintaining the Wicket Pines standard, you might consider relocating. I stepped closer. You think this is about a boat. It's not. It's about you deciding who fits your little perfect picture. Her nostrils flared just a little. You've been hostile since day one. You're intimidating the volunteers. One board member even filed a report. A report? What kind of HOA needs a security clearance? Pamela leaned in like she was delivering a sermon. This community is a curated experience. People move here for the tranquility, the visual harmony, the shared values. I let that hang there for a moment. Then I pulled a folded document from my back pocket, my uncle's original property deed, and tapped it with my finger. See this? My family's name has been on this land for over 40 years. You moved into my backyard, not the other way around. So before you send another kid to vandalize my boat or fine me for breathing, you better read the fine print. Because there's a line you're about to cross, and once you do, you don't get to come back. Pamela's face hardened. Is that a threat? No. That's a warning. I walked out without another word, my boots echoing off the tile. That night, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I sat on the dock with the old deed and a flashlight, flipping through every margin my uncle had scribbled on. Water rights, easements, boat access. There it was again. Wicket Lake, full private ownership. Turns out, my uncle had bought the lake itself back in 1992, along with a strip of the surrounding perimeter. Just enough to ensure no one could claim shared access. Smart man. He knew the development would come eventually. That's why he wrote in big block letters, "Maintain deeded control. Never let them fence you out." The next morning, I called a lawyer. Real estate guy named Gil who looked like he golfed more than he argued, but he knew his stuff. I handed him the deed, the lake survey, and the stack of HOA violations. Gil raised an eyebrow. You realize you're the sole title holder of this entire body of water? I do now. He nodded slowly. Then they're trespassing. Every time one of their boats launches from that west dock? Illegal. Fishing tournaments? Unlawful use. Fines? Completely unenforceable. Good, I said. Then it's time I remind them whose lake they're playin' on. We drafted a cease and desist letter that afternoon. Gil, being the professional, kept it polite. I asked him to add one line at the bottom. All further use of Wicket Lake by non-authorized residents is hereby prohibited. That included the HOA. That included Pamela. And most importantly, that included her little fishing club. We sent copies to the HOA board, the fishing club president, and even posted laminated notices on the dock and clubhouse. I made sure to sign them myself, right under the line that read, "Legal owner, Mason Carter." And that was just the beginning. You know that moment in a poker game when the bully realizes the quiet guy across the table's been holding a full house the whole time? That's what this next part felt like. After the cease and desist letters went out, the neighborhood went real quiet, eerily quiet. Not a single boat hit the water that Saturday morning. Normally, you'd hear kids yelling from paddleboards, the whine of some overpowered baseboat, or Mr. Clevenger from Lot 4 yelling at his dog for chewing his tackle box. But that weekend, Wicket Lake might as well have been glass. Not even a ripple. And I loved every second of it. See, once Gil served them, the HOA board had no choice but to stop all organized activity on the lake, at least until they verified the ownership claim. That verification didn't take long. Gil included the survey, the deed, the water rights, and a photocopy of my uncle's 1992 purchase from the original developer. Within 72 hours, Pamela called an emergency lake use committee session. She left a voice message trying to sound composed, but I could hear the panic in her voice. "Mr. Carter, I believe there's been a miscommunication regarding the legal designation of Wicket Lake. We'd appreciate it if you could join us this Thursday evening so we can, resolve the matter amicably." I didn't call back. Instead, I showed up at that meeting right on time, jeans, boots, clean flannel, and the full property file tucked under my arm. They held it in the HOA clubhouse, which looked like someone tried to recreate a ski lodge on a Texas budget. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, and a long oak table where Pamela sat at the center like she was presiding over the Supreme Court of HOAlandia. There were maybe 20 people in the room. Most were residents, curious folks. Some whispered. Others nodded at me like I was walking into a courtroom duel. Pamela stood. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Carter." I didn't answer. Just pulled up a chair and dropped the file on the table with a solid thump. She cleared her throat. "We've reviewed the documentation you provided and, it seems there may be some merit to your claim." Gil had prepped me for this. That phrase, some merit, meant they were trying to negotiate without admitting defeat. "I don't need you to agree," I said plainly. "I've got the title, the water rights, and a notarized transfer. This lake doesn't belong to Wicket Pines. It never has." A man to Pamela's left, some junior board member with slicked back hair and a sweater tied around his shoulders, chimed in. "Well, yes, Mr. Carter, but the lake has been used by the community for years. There's implied access here, what we call easement by use. Gil had warned me about this too." I leaned forward. "No easement was ever granted. Not written. Not verbal. My uncle even posted a sign back in '96. Just because you ignored it doesn't mean you get squat now." Gasp. "Real ones." I think Mrs. Dutton from Lot 11 dropped her purse. Pamela tried to recover. "We're simply asking for cooperation. Surely there's a way to allow the community continued access. The fishing club's annual tournament is coming up. Families plan their vacations around it." "That's not my problem," I said, standing. "Here's how this is gonna go. You've got until Friday at noon to remove all unauthorized equipment from the lake, including the 2 floating docks the HOA installed last summer without a permit. Any future access requires written permission. Violations will be prosecuted. Civil trespass laws apply." "You can't be serious," Pamela whispered. I looked right at her. Dead serious. Then I turned to leave, but paused in the doorway and added, "Oh, and you owe me $325 for those fake fines. Expect an invoice." I walked out to stunned silence. And I swear, I felt lighter than I had in years. The next morning, the lake was still empty. But by that afternoon, 2 workers showed up to dismantle the west dock. They didn't even look me in the eye. Just quietly loaded planks and foam pontoons into a flatbed and drove off. And just like that, the HOA Fishing Club was evicted from the lake. Word spread fast. People who'd ignored me at first started waving. Some even knocked on my door. "Hey Mason, just wanted to say, good for you." One guy brought beer. Another asked if he could rent part of the shoreline to launch his kayak. I didn't mind them. It was never about keeping people off the water. It was about keeping Pamela from treating me like trash in my own home. Speaking of Pamela, she didn't take the loss well. I'd see her walking the trail with that fake phone call routine, hand to her ear, eyes scanning like she was plotting a comeback. A few weeks later, I got another envelope. This one from the HOA legal consultant. They were requesting a formal agreement, some sort of shared usage memorandum. Basically, they wanted to license the lake. My response? I sent back a 1-page contract. Wicket Lake access, $10,000 per month for group use, plus liability insurance and indemnification waiver. No exceptions. They never responded. Instead, they canceled the fishing tournament. Posted an HOA bulletin blaming ongoing litigation. Of course, there was no litigation. They just didn't want to admit they'd lost to the old guy with the rusty boat and the quiet confidence. But I wasn't done yet. I took my lawyer's advice and registered the lake officially with the county as private recreational property. That sealed the deal. I posted clear signage along the shoreline. Private waters, no entry without authorization. And just to drive the point home, I had a custom sign made for the end of my dock. It read, "Welcome to Wicket Lake, owner, M. Carter. Please wipe your feet before disrespecting my property. Some folks laughed. Some scowled. But everybody understood one thing. Pamela didn't own the water anymore. I did. About 2 months after I shut the lake down, I got a letter. Not from the HOA this time, but from the County Environmental Board. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint claiming I was mismanaging a protected aquatic ecosystem. A bold move, considering I was the one who'd been maintaining that shoreline since the Clinton administration. Now I don't have proof that Pamela filed it, but it sure as hell smelled like her perfume. Bitter, expensive, and overcompensating. Fortunately, I'd already taken Gil's advice and documented every improvement I'd made. I'd cleared debris, restocked with base fingerlings, even paid for soil testing to keep invasive algae under control. The environmental board rep came out, took one look at my meticulous notes, and basically said, "You're doing more for this lake than half the city does for their parks." The complaint? Dismissed. No fines, no restrictions. And just like that, Pamela's last Hail Mary fell flat on its face. But fate, as it turns out, wasn't done yet. See, a neighbor named Joyce came by one morning. Older lady, sweet as sugar cookies, but sharp as a nail gun. She asked if I'd seen the recent HOA financials. I hadn't. Turns out they were posted online, tucked in some hard-to-find corner of the community portal. Joyce, bless her, printed them out and highlighted a few lines. There, in black and white, was a $7,200 community lake usage equipment charge, supposedly for maintenance and storage costs, in the months after the HOA had been banned from the lake. You don't have to be a forensic accountant to see the problem. They're charging residents for something they can't legally use, I said. Joyce nodded. And I think you're the only one they're afraid of. Well, that was all I needed. I forwarded the document to Gil, who confirmed it, fraud. Or, at the very least, willful misrepresentation of services. And in an HOA, that's a ticking time bomb. I made a few quiet calls. Not to the board, not to Pamela. No, I called the homeowners themselves. Especially the ones who'd been fined, ignored, or quietly fed up with years of pastel dictatorship. I told them what I'd found. I shared the numbers. I explained that they were being charged for lake access they no longer had, all while the board pretended nothing had changed. Within a week, we had signatures from nearly 40 households. More than enough to force a special election. Pamela didn't see it coming. She strutted into the next HOA meeting like the queen of suburbia, clipboard in hand, smug as ever. But when she saw the petition taped to the clubhouse door with all those signatures, her smile cracked like glass. "Effective immediately," I said, standing up, "the residents of Wicket Pines hereby motion for a full audit of the HOA board and the removal of President Pamela Whitmore under Article 6, Section 3 of the HOA Charter." She tried to talk over me. "This meeting is not officially sanctioned." "It is now," I said, flipping the printed charter open to the rules she clearly thought no one ever read. Her voice got shrill. "This is a coordinated attack. You people are being misled by a bitter man with a boat and a grudge." That was her mistake. Because that's when Joyce stood up and said, loud and clear, "Maybe so. But at least he's not charging us $7,000 for a lake he owns." Boom. The room erupted. People stood, voices raised. One guy yelled about how Pamela fined him for putting up a veteran's flag. Another said she called code enforcement on his daughter's lemonade stand. It was like the floodgates had opened. By the end of the night, the vote was unanimous. Pamela was removed. New leadership was appointed. A rotating group of volunteers, not wannabe politicians. The first thing they did? Cancel all unjust fines, issue refunds, and formally acknowledge that the lake belonged to me and could only be accessed by the HOA with permission and agreement. But I wasn't done just yet. See, I'd been thinking about those fishing club kids. Most of them weren't bad, just misled. So I opened up a new program, Wicket Lake Youth Anglers. Free for anyone in the community under 18, taught by local veterans, no HOA affiliation. We'd teach them real respect, for the water, for the land, and for people's property. Within weeks, we had kids lining up to join. Even the Clevenger twins, who used to egg my mailbox, showed up with fishing rods and sorry eyes. I let em in. Told em they could make it up to me by catching something worth bragging about. And Pamela? She moved out 3 months later. Word was, she tried to run for the board in a new community downstate, and was shut down after residents Googled her name and found a Facebook post titled Queen of HOA Tyranny Dethroned. Poetic. Now, every evening when I sit out on the dock with a cold drink and Miss Virginia floating beside me, I look out over my lake, quiet, peaceful, and free of HOA drama, and I smile. Because when they told me to move my boat, they didn't realize I owned the water beneath it. And in the end, they were the ones who got evicted.